Hey everybody, DM Galabond here, and tonight on Monster Monday, we are going to start looking at the monsters that come from the Critical Role Call of the Netherdeep sourcebook. And we're going to start that off by looking at a Matt Mercer variation on an old friend here at Monster Monday, the Aboleth. And this is a monster that is specifically called the Alyxian Aboleth. And of course, we are also going to take a look at some variants of the Aboleth, both by mining what Matt Mercer has done in the Critical Role campaign, and by looking backwards to the history of D&D and teasing out some ideas from older editions. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right into this. First, before we talk about the Alyxian Aboleth, we want to ground ourselves. We talk a little bit about the Aboleth in general. I've done an entire episode of Monster Monday just on the Aboleth itself, so we're not going to do that deep of a dive. We're just going to talk a little bit about where it came from and some of the historic features of the monster. So the Aboleth is a monster that has a long history in D&D, going all the way back to 1st edition AD&D. So in the source book, the Monster Manual 2, for that particular edition, we first saw the aquatic intelligent slave-taking monster that had incredible mental powers, including the power to create illusions and the power to use mental attacks to destroy its enemies. Okay, so Aboleths have been in the game ever since back then in 1st edition. They've evolved through the editions, but they have retained several key features along the way. Number one, they're incredibly intelligent monsters who communicate by telepathy. Number two, they have spell-like abilities that deal psionic or psychic damage to their enemies. And number three, they can enslave intelligent creatures, and they can make their thralls unable to breathe air, instead forcing them only to breathe underwater. This is a key element that all Aboleths have retained from the time of 1st edition all the way up to 5e, and including Matt Mercer's variant in Call of the Netherdeep. Well, now we're going to look at the Alyxian Aboleth from Call of the Netherdeep itself. So the Alyxian Aboleth appears when the characters have reached level 9, and this Aboleth shares many traits with its normal cousins from Wizards of the Coast. But this particular Aboleth was dreamed up by Matt Mercer and his team from Critical Role, so you know it's got a few changes to it. First of all, this particular Aboleth is a little tougher at CR 12. Normal 5th edition Aboleths are CR 10. And the reason for this is that the Alyxian Aboleth can enslave more creatures. Now, normally, an Aboleth can attempt to enslave 3 creatures per day maximum. But the Alyxian Aboleth gets a recharge on its enslave attempts. That means it has a 50% chance every round to be able to enslave someone through mental domination. So if you think about that, a normal adventuring party is 5 or 6 people. So a normal Aboleth, at best, if the characters have really crappy dice rolls and can't make saving throws to save their lives, at best, the normal Aboleth can mentally enslave about half the party. Well, now along comes this Alyxian Aboleth, and if you keep rolling well behind the screen on those d6s, and you keep coming up with 4 to 6 on that recharge, well then every round you can just keep trying to enslave the party, and it could be that within 5 or 6 rounds you have the entire party enslaved. Now, also depending on what kind of openings you do, is sort of mental communication you try, you might project images, you might confuse the players, you might telepathically contact some of the players, and they may not realize that this is even going on until they have to start rolling saving throws. And then if they fail a saving throw, they can't warn their their fellow party members that something is up. So you could have this guy very sneakily go through and without ever even rolling for initiative, could one by one enslave the entire party. So that is a real danger with this particular monster. So another thing that makes the Alyxian Aboleth more dangerous is the poisoned emotion effects that the creature's mental projections have on the PCs. Now, failing a saving throw against these communications causes the PC to have disadvantage on certain rolls until they can succeed in a subsequent saving throw, or someone uses a remove curse on them. Now, that I don't want to go into a whole lot about what those are because it's tied in with the plot of the campaign, so it would be a bit of a spoiler to explain too much of that. So just understand that that's an extra added thing that this particular monster does. And when we talk about homebrew, we'll talk a little bit about how you can maybe flavor some of your interactions with a homebrew aboleth by sprinkling in an idea like this. The aboleth in general resembles a plump fish 20 feet in length from its bulbous head to its fluke-like tail. Its body is normally blue-green with gray splotches, and its pink-tan underbelly conceals a toothless, rubbery mouth. So 3 slit-like eyes, purple red in color and protected by bony ridges, are set one atop the other in the front of its head. And 4 pulsating blue-black orifices line the bottom of its body and secrete gray slime that smells like rancid grease. 4 leathery tentacles, each 10 feet in length, grow from its head. The Alyxian Aboleth also has a secondary face that has grown beside its mouth, and veins of ruidium crisscross the aboleth's body. Now, ruidium, I'll tell you, that's just a particular mineral that is also tied up in the plot of Matt Mercer's campaign. So, once again, we're not going to explain too much about that. If you want to know about that, you got to find somebody to run the campaign for you. Aboleths in general lair in subterranean lakes or the rocky depths of the ocean, often surrounded by the ruins of an ancient fallen aboleth city. And the aboleth spends most of its existence underwater, surfacing occasionally to treat with visitors or deranged worshippers. Now, this particular Alyxian Aboleth is a unique creature that believes it carries the soul of the apotheon within its body, trapped in this aberrant form as divine punishment for his failure to save the world during the calamity. All right, and that kind of gives you a little bit of a clue. That's where those sort of poisoned emotions come from, and the penalties that you might get from the mental projections, because poor old Alyxian Aboleth, he's just confused. He thinks he's somebody else. And he's, in some ways, he's kind of pitiful. In other ways, he's really terrifying. A pitiful, terrifying creature. All right, now, when we talk about tactics, within the particular campaign, the Alyxian Aboleth often communicates with PCs before they realize that it's there, unless somebody has already told the PCs that the aboleth is present. Now, this area that they go to is an area that a lot of people have tried to explore, and they know there's monsters there, and they know people go there and they disappear, they don't come back. So somebody may know about this aboleth and may tell them that it's there. Other people may just say, hey, big monsters, watch out. So the messages that the aboleth uses to communicate with the PCs carry the risk of poisoned emotions effect, and they seem to be distorted messages from the long-lost hero that the PCs have been sent to find. And once the PCs begin communicating with the Alyxian Aboleth, the aboleth learns of their fondest desires and can use those to draw them near so it can try to charm and enslave them. So yes, it thinks it's somebody heroic, but it still acts like an Aboleth, and there's still some of that hardwired, oh, you like candy? I have candy. Come, let me share candy with you. So that's kind of the way the Alyxian Aboleth works. All right, now Aboleths are aberrations. And aberrations are utterly alien beings. Depending on the various editions of the game, they are either considered beings that are from a different kind of reality, or in 5th edition they call it beings from the far realm. They are creatures that have such an alien form of life and an alien viewpoint and an alien way that their mind works, that they really are super different from the creatures that people know in the prime material plane, and even places like the astral plane and the elemental planes and some of the other planes that people frequently visit in the D&D multiverse. So quintessential aberrations include Aboleths, Beholders, Mind Flayers, and Slotty. And another thing that you may understand from that is oftentimes these are monsters that have really kind of strange mental powers that are used in often unfriendly ways. So Aboleths have the psychic attacks that they use. Obviously, Beholders, they're, in addition to being extremely powerful, extremely greedy, extremely unpredictable, they are also really paranoid, and they have all of these mental powers that they can focus through their eye stalks and their eye rays and attack people with. So very, very, very strange creatures when you start messing around with aberrations. All right, now I want to talk a little bit about Aboleths in general, the Alyxian Aboleth from Critical Role, and the idea of Aboleth slaves. So, ever since Aboleths have been introduced to the game, they have the oddities of being aberrations, in this case 5e from the far realms, having undying memories, and they're also slavers. Now, in 5th edition, in the Monster Manual, we're told in a story about the Aboleths in general that in the time before the gods, Aboleths arrived in the world, and wherever they came close to the land, they enslaved the land dwellers, who in turn worshipped the Aboleths as deities. But when the gods of the current pantheon came, they destroyed the Aboleth empires and turned the people to worshiping the deities instead. Because of these undying memories that the Aboleths have, they have never forgotten this, and they've never forgiven either the gods or the people who betrayed them. Now, this gives us some things to play with when we consider other variations of Aboleths to use in our games. Aboleth slaves. And in the Critical Role adventure, as well as in the 4th edition Monster Manual, we get a couple of different ideas of where we can mine this, and we're going to use these ideas as starting points when we create some of our variations of an Aboleth for all 4 tiers of play. First of all, from Critical Role, we're going to look at the Aboleth spawn, which you see on your screen now. In the Call of the Netherdeep, Matt Mercer introduces these monsters. They are creatures that perhaps at one time might have been humanoid, but they've long since been enslaved by the Aboleth, and now they take on some of the features of the monster. So we're going to base a tier 1 variant of an Aboleth on this particular monster here. And then from 4th edition, we're going to take a look at the Aboleth Servitor. And you're going to see 2 of those on your screen right now, flanking a monster from 4th edition called the Aboleth Overseer. Now, in the Monster Manual for 4th edition, we find these humanoid slaves that are level 16 minions. So we're going to turn these into the bodyguards for our own Tier 4 variant, which will be an Emperor fit for a vast and long-lost Aboleth Empire. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how our Tier 1 through 4 Aboleth and Aboleth variants are going to look. If we look at Tier 1, we're going to take a look at the Aboleth spawn. Now, this is right out of the Critical Role Call of the Netherdeep sourcebook. So, the armor class is 14, 93 hit points, speed of 30 feet, swim of 30 feet, and strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, all fairly good. Stat block is a little bit high. You notice intelligence is a dump stat, charisma not so great. Skills, special skills of perception, has resistance to psychic damage, immune to being charmed or frightened, dark vision out to 120 feet, passive perception of 14. Has common, deep speech, and telepathy out to 60 feet. CR 5. Now, it's an Abolethic vessel, so that means the spawn must obey its Aboleth master. And it's amphibious, so it can breathe both air and water. It is dependent on water, so it takes 1d12 acid damage every 10 minutes it goes without being immersed in water. Now, that is actually another feature of the Aboleth and the people that are enslaved by Aboleths. That comes to us all the way from 1st edition. That has been a constant all the way through. A multi-attack, it makes 1 spear attack, 2 tentacle attacks, and 1 psychic lash attack. Spear is melee or ranged +7, 1d6 +4 piercing, or 1d8 +4 when used with 2 hands in a melee attack. Tentacle is +7, reach 10 feet, 2d8 psychic damage at the start of each of its turns until the grapple ends. And so the escape for the grapple once you get grabbed by a tentacle is DC 14. Spawn has 4 tentacles, each of which can grapple a creature. And then it has the Psychic Lash, a ranged spell attack, out to 120 feet, +7 to attack, and 4d8 psychic damage. All right, so for a CR5, I mean, that is a monster that's good to throw at like a level 3 party or something like that. That's a pretty good test, especially if you're going to have that fight take place in or near the water, where you would expect it to be for a creature like this. All right, now let's look at the Alyxian Aboleth, which is the main monster, and we're going to just look at it as written. It's got an armor class of 17, 135 hit points, speed of 10 feet, swim 30 feet. Pretty good stat block. Dex is definitely its dump stat, so strength of 21, dex 9, constitution 15, intelligence 18, wisdom 18, charisma 18. So got the bonuses on constitution, intelligence, and wisdom saving throws, bonuses to history and perception, dark vision out to 120 feet, passive perception 22. So deep speech and telepathy out to 120 feet, CR 12, and proficiency bonus of +4. So again, it's amphibious, and then it has some features that come straight from the garden variety Aboleth. You have the mucus cloud. While underwater, the Aboleth is surrounded by a cloud of sticky mucus. Creature that touches the Aboleth or hits it with a melee attack while within 5 feet must succeed on a DC 14 strength save or be restrained until the end of the Aboleth's next turn. And then another feature that comes from the normal Aboleth is probing telepathy. If a creature the Aboleth can see communicates telepathically with it, the Aboleth learns the creature's greatest desires and we'll use those against them. Or at least they better. If you're not using the PC's greatest desires against the players, you're not doing something right as a DM. Alright, so multi-attack. The Aboleth makes 2 tentacle attacks. Those are at +9, 2d6 plus 5 bludgeoning damage, and an additional 1d6 psychic damage. And then it has a tail attack. +9 to hit, reach of 10 feet, and 2d8 plus 5 bludgeoning. So then it has the bonus actions, and this is the Enslave, and this is what we talked about with the recharge on 4 to 6. Targets 1 creature can see within 30 feet. Target must succeed on a DC 14 Wisdom save or be magically charmed until the Aboleth dies or until it's on a different plane of existence from the target. Now, the charmed target is under the Aboleth's control and cannot take reactions. The Aboleth and the target can communicate telepathically with each other over any distance. So the charmed target can repeat the saving throw under only certain conditions. 1, whenever it takes damage, which saving throw will end the effect on a success. Or 2, no more than once every 24 hours, target can repeat the saving throw when it is at least 1 mile away from the Aboleth. So if it stays close to the Aboleth, it will never get that chance to make that saving throw. And of course, once the Aboleth has you enslaved, it wants you to stay close. Hey, I'm your friend. Oh yeah, you're my friend. I only want what's best for you. Yeah, you only want what's best for me. Come, stay. Look at all this wonderful food. Oh, this is great. Look at all these great luxuries. Oh, this is beautiful. Stay a while. Be my guest. Okay, I'll stay. I'll be your guest. That's kind of the way that the Aboleth is going to treat its charmed creatures, to really sort of keep that bond strong and keep them close so they don't get a chance to make those saving throws. Now, the Alyxian Aboleth also gains legendary actions. You can take 3 legendary actions, which include a tail swipe and a psychic drain. So 1 creature charmed by the Aboleth takes 3d6 psychic damage, and the Aboleth regains hit points equal to the damage dealt. Now, it's probably not going to do that to one of its thralls. Not unless it really, really, really needs hit points. But it's possible. So now we need a Tier 3 variant for the Aboleth and a Tier 4 variant as well. And that's what we're going to take a look at. We've talked a little bit about the Aboleth Servitor, and that's where we're going to harken back for our Tier 3 variant. Now, we are going to imagine that the Aboleth Servitor is a thrall, and that these are sort of the elite guard for an Aboleth Emperor. So what would our stat block for those guys look like? Well, let's say armor class 19, natural armor, because of the transformation that these humanoids undergo when they become Aboleth Servitors. 220 hit points, 20 feet movement on land, 40 feet swim speed, CR 16, proficiency bonus +5. Now look at this stat block. Very high stat block in the physical stats. Very average in the mental stats. So CR 22, or Strength 22, Dex 14, Constitution 21, Intelligence 10, Wisdom 10, Charisma 10. Attack bonus of +11, damage bonus of +6. It gets 2 slam attacks, or I suppose if you wanted to, you could arm it with weapons. 1d8 +6 bludgeoning for each slam attack, and each slam attack deals 1d6 psychic damage. It's immune to psychic damage, and then the Servitor gains advantage to attack any creature that is inside the mucus cloud of an Aboleth. and attacks against an Aboleth Servitor have disadvantage when it is within 60 feet of the Aboleth Emperor that it serves. And then, of course, all of the other special abilities, it's subject to the same kind of immunities, resistances, and vulnerabilities of the other Aboleths. So you take it out of water, it starts taking acid damage every so often. So those types of things. That would be your Tier 3 variant. Now let's take a look at what we would propose as a Tier 4 variant, and that would be the Aboleth Emperor. So armor class here would be 22, 331 hit points, 30 feet swim, or 30-foot movement on land, 80-foot swim speed, CR 19, proficiency bonus +6, and the stat blocks for this guy are very, very high across the board. Why? The reason is because this is the Emperor. They're not just going to make any old Aboleth the Emperor. They're going to make like the best of the best the Aboleths the Emperor. So this guy's got it really going on. Or gal. Hey, you can have an Emperor or an Empress. Your game, your rules. Do it the way you wish. So 26 strength, dex 14, constitution 15, intelligence 26, wisdom 26, charisma 22. Attack bonus is +14, damage bonus is +8. It gets 4 tentacle attacks, 2d8 +8 bludgeoning, +2d6 psychic damage, and on top of all of that, the target must make a DC 22 wisdom saving throw or be dominated by the Emperor as the dominate person spell. Dominated creature acts immediately after the Emperor and uses its actions to follow the Emperor's telepathic commands. If given no commands, it defends the Emperor and or itself. Now, the Emperor may dominate up to 4 creatures per round, and it may have no more than 8 creatures dominated at any one time. So this is a very quick way of taking your big bruisers in the party and turning them against everybody else. So resistances, resistant to damage from non-magical weapons that are not adamantine. Immunities, immune to psychic damage, immune to being charmed, stunned, or rendered unconscious by magic. Also has the same resistances, immunities, and vulnerabilities of the other Aboleths. You take it out of water for too long, it's going to take acid damage. Now, other standard abilities, so it's got the standard Aboleth abilities and attacks, that mucus cloud, the psychic probing, where it can, it can find out what your desires are, those types of things, telepathy, all of that good stuff. Legendary resistance 3 times a day. Spell casting, I would suggest a mix of spells that are in kind of charm or domination, illusions, because it talks about Aboleths being able to create illusions that will confuse people about where they are or what they're seeing, and spells that deal with water, obviously, because they're underwater creatures. Then legendary actions, and it can use those legendary actions perhaps to attack, to cast a spell, or to swap places with a dominated creature. So if the Aboleth gets surrounded by party members, then the Aboleth can just go whoop, teleport, and swap its place with a minion. So that suddenly everybody is not attacking the Aboleth, they're attacking Bill the Barbarian, who just got dominated by the Aboleth last round. Oh no, we don't want to attack Bill. Now we gotta swim all the way over there and attack that stupid Aboleth. So that is another option that you can do. All right, well, that's going to do it for our look at the Alyxian Aboleth and some Homebrew Aboleth variants. I hope you have enjoyed this. I hope it's given you some ideas of some things that you can do in your game. Of course, this is just one DM's idea, and I don't even have a place at the moment where I think I would use an Aboleth in a homebrew campaign yet. But it's always nice to imagine these creatures, imagine what they would do, and sort of imagine how you could use them when you are creating a campaign or creating a scenario that you might want to run for your players. I have been DM Galabond. You can find me live, usually 3 nights a week. This summer, it's been kind of busy. Lots of people traveling. 2 years after the pandemic, there's a lot of pent-up desire for people to get out of the house, so people taking vacations for the first time in a while, and that has really messed with the schedule of our game. Also, my local soccer team, thank you, Orlando City, has been doing really well in the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup this year. And, of course, they decide to put all of those games on a night that conflicts with D&D. So, and we've been hosting all of those games at our local stadium. So that means that on those nights, I am down at the stadium cheering my fool head off, hoping that my team continues to advance in that competition. But normally on Sunday afternoons, and I think we'll be here next Sunday, Walker of Waterdeep, 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday. Then Sword Coast Chronicles is our Wednesday night game. That is on hiatus for a couple of weeks. One because of a friendly against EPL side Arsenal, the other because of the aforementioned Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup that's happening at the end of July. Then Saturday evenings, Saturday evenings has taken a real hit. I think we're playing this Saturday night, but if it's not the men's team that has a home game, oftentimes it's the women's team that has a home game on Saturday night, so I'm at the stadium for one or both of those. You can find all of those live streams over on the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Galabond. All of the archives for all of those. If you don't want to try to catch us live, you can catch the archives here on YouTube anytime, just right here where you're watching this video. And then we have a Patreon where you can go and you can try to help us get some new material. All of those things are down in the doobly-doo, as Matt Colville says in the description of the video here. All right, next week when we come back, we are going to take a look at the Corrupted Giant Shark, another monster from Critical Role Call of the Netherdeep. If you've been watching this far, thank you so much. If you would, I would love it if you would go down, click the subscribe button to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, and click the post notification bell so that you get notified every time new content drops on the channel. I have been DM Galabond. This has been Monster Monday. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. And I'll remind you, watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everybody.